welcome to the DevOps Directive Office Hours. This is the 4th episode, and once again, I am joined by Donny Roufs, and we will continue to work on his project LeagueDex. We've had 2 episodes so far on this project. The first episode, we just reviewed the status of the project, went through the code base a little bit. In the second episode, that was the last one, we spent some time dockerizing the application and getting a development set up with Docker Compose. And then in this one, we'll be continuing with that and adding some more production-ready configurations. And depending on how far we get, we'll start working towards getting that deployed onto DigitalOcean. So Donny, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually hyped about today because today is going to be this next step of moving away from development. So that's cool.
Yeah. And at the end of last stream, we had gotten stuck a little bit on a couple of things. So I'll go ahead and share out my screen here in a minute. And let me check the settings on my page because it says we have 0 concurrent viewers, which usually we have a few by this point. Wonder if I have it set up as private or something. We could be here chatting all alone forever.
Well, they can still watch it back, so.
That is true. No, it looks fine. So we'll see if people join. In the meantime, we'll just be building some stuff. Oh, Ismail says he's here. Cool, good to know. We've got at least one. Maybe it's just the YouTube studio is acting up. There we go. Now we've got a few viewers coming in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. I need to share my screen. And I will try to zoom in more than I did last week because I remember it being a little difficult to see. So let me know in the audience if you can see this all right. And also let us know where you are tuning in from because it's always good to know who all is watching and connect with the community members. Let's see. So I have up our... Oh, this was just some stuff I was doing with Kubernetes playing around in the background. We have our Docker Compose file. Let me close everything else. And as just a reminder, we have a Postgres DB. These are just our development settings. That's exposing port 5432 to connect in. All of our services are connected on this PERN app bridge network, which is configured here at the bottom. That just allows them to all talk together without necessarily being able to talk on the host network. We then also have the API server, which is located in this server directory. It is reading in a couple of environment files that have some secrets, so both our database connection string as well as some other configurations there within the environment file. We're mounting in our source code here, and that enables us to reload on the fly. So when we make a code change locally, that will be reflected inside the container. And then we're using nodemon currently to watch for those changes and restart the API server when it detects those. On the front end, it is a React-based client located in this client directory. This is just sort of a hack the development server that Create React App provides when you do yarn dev or npm dev. If you run it inside of a Debian-based container, it closes immediately. So this allows you to keep that server open without it terminating the container. We're exposing on port 3000. Again, we're mounting in the source code so that we can reflect changes live and not have to rebuild the container every single time. And then I don't think we're actually using this for anything. This is just the database admin tool, right, Donny?
Yeah, it's something that comes in handy during development sometimes, but besides that, you don't use it. At least I don't.
Got it. Cool. And so at the end of last stream, we had gotten a little bit stuck on getting this all running with the Docker Compose setup. Afterwards, I went and debugged that so I can show you what I did. Essentially, we were not properly initializing the database. So because it's a Postgres database and we need it to match our schema of our API, we need to seed that database and then run any migrations that we have on it. So what I did after the stream was I took the bootstrap script that you had already had and I modified it slightly. And so now what it's doing is it is running this yarn prisma migrate up and yarn prisma generate inside of that container. And then it actually starts the index.js server process. This works, but it's not ideal because generally when we're deploying this to, let's say, DigitalOcean, we're not going to want to run these commands every time. We're only going to want to run them if the database needs a migration. And let's say if the app crashes, we want to restart only this. We don't want to restart and rerun any of this stuff. The way that I'm currently calling this is just at the end of the Docker file, whereas before we had this was running that nodemon command, or it might have just been running node or yarn start. Instead, it's running this bootstrap script, and so that gets executed each time. Let's just make sure that everything is working as expected. Let's see.
And before it's broken.
Oh, no. I just noticed that the Digital Life Christian is in the audience, so welcome. Glad to have you here. We're talking Docker and Node and Postgres, all sorts of good stuff. I am in the top level. Docker compose up, Docker dash compose. It's in swarm mode. Didn't even know I was in swarm mode. But yeah, so that prints out a few things. Green is our front end, purple is our database, yellow is our API server. The relation already exists. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and see what that looks like on port 3000. And we should be able to log in and log out if things are working properly. I think you said, is it admin and then ASD? ASD?
Yeah. Easiest password there is.
That's right. Cool. Okay, so that all seems to be working. So we're back to where we were at the end of last stream. Like I said, we probably want to extract out this database specific stuff from our main server container and have like a way to seed the database, a way to migrate the database, etc. Let me just just have a to-do list here for extract. Actions from server container. Once we do that, we want to add Nginx server, and build of client. What else do we need to do?
Good question.
I mean, eventually we'll need to get our certificates and stuff set up with this configuration. Right now you have those just configured directly on the droplet, right?
So initially I did it on the droplet, but then I started using Cloudflare, and now Cloudflare handles everything for me.
Got it. So is it you have a certificate from Cloudflare that you put on the droplet, or are you using the flexible option where it like terminates your HTTPS at Cloudflare and then sends a
I
HTTP
believe the
request?
flexible option.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Because I'm not 100% sure, because the thing that I did before I used Cloudflare was set up my own certificate with like this is, I can't even remember what it's called, but there was one to do it, and then I used that for like a few months, and then I moved to Cloudflare and everything just worked. So
Nice.
I
Cool.
was like, okay, it works, whatever.
Okay, yeah, so maybe we don't need to worry about certificates then. But yeah, let's focus on this first one to start. And Joshua says, I always use strict on Cloudflare and let's encrypt on the server. Yeah, so by doing that, you can make sure that traffic is encrypted from the Cloudflare proxy all the way to your server. And it's a bit more secure. If you don't have if you're not dealing with any super sensitive data, like the attack vector between Cloudflare and for someone to get in the middle there and intercept that request is pretty unlikely. But if you're dealing with something that is super sensitive, certainly you would want to have the encryption on your server as well. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all depends on sort of what the data you're protecting is, what the threat model is, what you're thinking someone might, where someone or how someone might attack, and like what their incentives are, and how hard it would be for them to do it. Okay, so why don't we here within this Docker file, let's actually separate it out into what's called a multi-stage Docker file. So we'll first have kind of a build stage that copies in our code, installs all the dependencies, etc. And then from there, we can have one Docker file one image, sorry, that is dedicated for migrating the database, and then another one that's dedicated for seeding or running the actual API server itself. And I just saw that my father showed up this time. Donny, I know your father popped in our first stream, so glad to have you here, Dad. He's my number one fan for sure.
Those are the best dads.
That's right. And so for a multi-stage Docker file, we will name each stage. You don't have to. You can just reference them by index, but it's easier if we name it. So let's call this as builder. And so at this point, we will have copied in our code, installed everything.
One question comes to mind. Do you actually want to separate the migration? Because if you run the migrations and there's no new migration, then Prisma will automatically say, okay, there's no new one, so we can just skip this.
So what I was thinking is we would keep it separate, which just seems cleaner from an organizational point of view to me. And then we can still run it with each deploy potentially. There's also presumably cases where if you make a breaking change to your database schema, you wouldn't want to automatically run it, right? Like there could be a situation where you need to wait until after you've deployed the API server before you run your migration, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's true.
Ideally, you design your schema changes such that they are non-breaking. And there's some tricks that you can do to enable that in terms of like adding a new column, writing to both the new column and the old column, then deprecating the old column in the API server, and then finally removing that from the database. It does require much more work than bringing the app down for 30 seconds, running your migration, and then bringing up the new version. And so there are certainly trade-offs, and for a project like this, it's probably not worth it to really enforce zero downtime migrations for everything. For a really massive app that is getting tons of traffic, they have much higher incentive to build these zero downtime migrations such that they don't have to have random downtimes just to upgrade the app version.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so what I was thinking here is that we would then we still want all our source code. That pop-up is getting annoying. I should turn that off. But we will have a second stage basically here. And that will be yeah, so we'll also make it from the same image. Or we could just override our command when we actually execute it. Could be another way to handle that. So like if we, let me kill this. Like rather than doing multi-stage, what if we have our default command be, let's say, whatever we're calling at the end of this. Come on. Got a typo there. Okay, so now if I run it, we should just run the API server, not the Prisma stuff, but that should be okay because we still have that same Docker volume where those changes were getting stored. Nicholas says hello from Argentina. Hey, how's it going? Glad to have you here.
Looks like it got mad.
Yeah, why did it crash? Didn't like it. New Prisma client. Okay, so these this Prisma generate command generates a schema file or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
and so before I was running it inside that container with this bootstrap script, how it was before, right? And so now that file is no longer, like when we kill the container and bring it back up, it's not necessarily getting stored.
Yeah, because I believe that Yarn Prisma generate adds something into node modules, so it loses it, I guess.
Okay. And so realistically, we want that file to exist in our new container, but we also don't want to necessarily run that every time. Like we could run it and have it saved outside the container and then mount that schema file into our... Is it this file that gets generated or a different one?
No, so it doesn't generate
this one as an input.
Yeah. If you look into node modules, I think it should add something like .prisma. Yeah. So that's what it generates. Also, it does actually include a schema, though. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and so we're not copying our node modules from our local system because the dependencies could be different. Before we were thinking we could run it within our build, within our Docker file. In that case, we would need... Maybe we can just do that. I had taken that out since last time, but maybe that would work just fine. This one. We want to do that probably right. Oh, after we've copied in our copy. Do we only need that prisma schema? Actually, I'll just do it after we copy everything.
As far as I'm aware, yes. Not sure. Last time I used Prisma was in a TypeScript environment, so.
Well, yeah, let's just copy in our run. And it was schema prisma. Schema, if I could type prisma. Nicholas says, too much COVID here. Shared the link with some friends. Hope they can join us. Yeah, there are a number of places right now that are really struggling with COVID. So sorry to hear that. I hope you're managing during these times. My dad says he is in Asheville, North Carolina, which is my hometown growing up. And hello to Shyam from India. Glad to have you here. Cannot kill container. What's still running? Oh. And I'll just paste a link to your original repo in the chat so that people can check it out if they haven't yet. The site, the production version of the site is leaguedex.com, and the repo is here. I have a fork of this repo on my GitHub, which is what we're working with right now. So it looks like that worked. That's good. So we were able to use our schema and generate the necessary Prisma files in the build step, which allows us to run it directly. Okay, let me make sure we're not fooling ourselves. Zoom in, log out, log in. Great. So that is good. I also saw there was so PM2, which is that process manager you're using on the droplet, they have a Docker config that adds some niceness around productionizing your environment.
Okay.
That we could add. You basically just add one line to the Docker file, and then it essentially wraps your application in some of the niceness that PM2 provides out of the box. So we could do that as well. Not found. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And I should probably turn off swarm mode if we're not actually using it. Let's see.
So by default, LeagueDex actually tries to see if you're in game, but there's no check to actually check if you have an account or not. So it's going to be complaining about it's not found.
Got it. And then we had a question from Ismail about swarm mode. Yeah, so I had swarm mode on by default because I was experimenting with it off stream. I don't think we're going to need it here because we're going to deploy onto a single droplet on DigitalOcean. We know we have a fixed number of CPU and memory, and so we can just specify within our configuration how many copies of the app we want. We can manually wire up the networking, like swarm mode or something like Kubernetes or an orchestrator is really nice when you might be adding more copies down the line, and so it automatically handles a lot of the configuration for having anywhere from 1 to n copies. But since we'll probably just have a fixed number, like let's say one staging API, maybe 2 or 3 copies of the production API with Nginx load balancing across them. We don't necessarily really need swarm mode. But I was saying we should go check out this PM2 Docker thing. Yeah, so I think we can just run this. So I will run it there, but I'll use yarn. This will be actually even less frequent than our... And then rather than run our app, we will run this command. Source.
I think there's a typo in the beginning, by the way. So instead of yarn install, it's yarn add. At least if I remember correctly.
No, that's right. npm install yarn add.
Yeah.
Good catch.
It's actually funny because I started using yarn because I didn't want to prefix my scripts with run, and then I ended up creating scripts with run in front of it.
And then just because I don't want to keep typing the same things over and over, I'm gonna add a makefile because that's just what I do.
So this looks really close to YAML.
No, this is closer to just Bash. Make and Bash are slightly different. Each of these individual at the most the root level is a target or a recipe. When I invoke it, it will just run each of the commands that are underneath it in series. You can't have like multiple levels of targets like you could in YAML, how you have multiple indentation. Yeah, make is just a super old Unix tool, primarily used for configuring builds of compiled languages, but for one-off little commands, I find it super useful.
I see.
Like now I'll just do run build or make run local, and tab complete will work and it'll be good to go. Okay, so we just did that. Let's just try running it again, see what happens. Make run local. And Ali says, hi, I'm not so late. No, we just got started a little while ago. We're about half an hour in. We're continuing on from where we left off last time. So what did it not like about that PM2 runtime? Cannot find module, but we installed it globally. Why is it not found?
Oh, wait, can you go up?
Yep.
So to install a global with yarn, you need to do yarn, what is it, global add? I think.
Yeah, it's probably just
I'm not sure if the flag
between,
works in yarn.
Yarn. Yeah, so it gave us the npm. Yeah, so it looks like yarn global add PM2. So did it just silently ignore our flag and say, oh. Make build.
Always, right? Well, it works. No, it doesn't.
Just a dev asks what my thoughts on running Docker Compose in production are. People often advise against it. I think primarily because it's usually used as a dev tool. If you configure things properly, it's not too bad. The one downside that really stands out is the fact that you now have all of your components tied together in this one config. So like if you want to upgrade just one of them or scale up one of them and add another copy, that can be a little cumbersome with Docker Compose. Yeah, so I think for smaller projects, if it's just one copy of each component, I think it's not too bad as long as you make sure to configure it right, but it's not too bad otherwise. And Nicholas asks, how do you manage compose between environments? I'm assuming you mean like between a development versus production environment. And for that, I'd generally have multiple copies of my Docker Compose file. So like I'd have a development one in which I am running the dev server for the client, and then we're going to have a separate one where we are running an Nginx server with a built version of the client source files or the resulting static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then when we deploy to DigitalOcean, I'm not sure whether we'll use that Docker Compose file or just run the necessary Docker commands to instantiate those. Okay, so now hopefully we have that PM2 package global. So if we do make run local, and I guess I'm just going to comment out this add minor part since we're not using it. No need to have it there. And I
Seems
think
like it's happy.
it is now happy. Yeah. Yeah, looks like it's getting those requests. Yeah, and so what that PM2 package does, I guess it adds a few things for us, which is nice. Not sure exactly what all these things mean, but that's good. Seems useful.
That's how I always feel about DevOps.
Oh, interesting. We might even be able to do the load balancing piece with PM2, because this is saying if we wanted to have multiple copies running, that might be the way to do it. Awesome. It's good to know. For now, we'll just focus on getting one copy up and running. I believe also we should, before we run our final command, we should do user node. And so this switches the user inside of that container from the root user, which is used here because it's necessary to install a bunch of stuff, to a non-root user with a higher PID. So I think this is like user ID 1000. And so that just adds another layer of protection that if someone did find an exploit in your application or one of your dependencies and had access to the container, it's best not to have them have access to that root user. So that should be another upgrade that we make. Nice emojis from Ismail. Oh, interesting. Sometimes the emojis come through as text in StreamYard, but it looks like those actually made it through. And Ali says, it's hard to read even on the ultra-fine monitor. Yeah, I tried to zoom in quite a bit to make that better. Hopefully it's legible. I may also at some point upgrade to the 1080p, but I haven't done so yet. I was hoping that just zooming one more click would be sufficient. Oh.
I mean, quality seems fine for me, and I'm on an ultra wide, so.
Yeah, I wonder if it's getting degraded at all between. Are you looking at on the StreamYard or on? You're probably not on the YouTube stream, are you?
Both. I got both.
Oh,
open.
both. Okay.
I actually just realized that I could go to comments to see all the messages.
Oh yeah, for sure.
2 parts in. Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah, it looks okay on. I just pulled up the version of the stream. All right, so make build, make run. We wrapped it in PM2. We now wanted to add another a way for us to run those migration scripts and the seeding scripts without having it in the compose for the final application, right?
Mhm.
So what if we did like migrate DB, seed DB. And I'm just putting echo pass as a placeholder until we actually do something. So if I were to run make seed DB, it would just print that to the terminal. But we want to do docker run. What am I actually naming these? What does it get tagged as when I build it? Docker image less. Okay, I have a ton. Let me grep for league dex. Okay, so it's just getting that latest tag. So I'm just going to run that container, but I want to override the command by specifying another command here. So like if I just did this -run it, then it should run bash instead of our normal PM2 runtime command, and just drop me into a shell on that container. Yeah, so here, this is now a shell running inside of that container, so that is cool. And what we wanted to do is run this guy. So normally we would, does the order on these matter? Like we need to first run this migrate, generate.
You need to migrate first
and then
generate.
do the seed. Migrate first, then generate, and then seed.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's get rid of this in this bootstrap. And essentially, we're just going to run this bootstrap sh instead of, so this is pwd. So if we just do,
there's a typo.
Typo? Where's the typo?
The very end of the line. You named it bootstrap.
Bootstrap. There we go.
Might be a cool name for a new app. Bootstrap.
So now what happens if we run that? Exit.
Uh-oh. Command failed.
Okay. No, that's because the database is not running. Or like this can't access the database. So really, we almost need like a Docker compose for just the DB, or I could just run it. I think ideally we like start the DB in a container, we run this bootstrap, and then we store all the data from the DB and configuration stuff on our host system that then we can mount into the actual one, right? Because we want to be able to persist those data from this bootstrapping phase into our actual application running phase. And so I think getting those stored into a volume on the host is going to be the way to go. Excuse me. Ali says you must have a better pair of glasses than him because he's unable to see.
Well, maybe. I should get new ones though. I feel like I'm still blind, even with those glasses.
Okay, so I'm going to do it in just a separate compose because that'll be easier to configure. So why don't we just do this, rename. Very long file name. Then we're going to do the -- file. I always forget. Why will that not die? Come on. Docker compose. Docker compose.
Dash file.
-- file. Yeah. -- file. .yaml. Killed that terminal. I'm not sure what was going on there. Okay, so we're all cleaned up from before. We now have this separate Docker compose file, and in here, we do want the database. We'll want it on that. We do want the API, but we're going to do a little different. We don't actually need the client. We don't need add miner. The database is fine. We have this depending on the database. And then I think we'll just have a command section. Something like something like that is probably what we want. Yeah. Okay. User source app bootstrap or bootstrap. .sh. Let's see. Make bootstrap db. No, didn't like it. Oh, I needed a up in my make command. Orphan containers. Okay, so it looks like it successfully found the database container and ran that script. Except, why is it listening? We wanted just to... Oh, I haven't rebuilt the container. So potentially the bootstrap inside of that container still contains those changes that we had before.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it not want to die? Done. All right. So now if we do bootstrap DB, what do we think is going to happen? Probably remove those containers. All migrations applied. Seeding database. Exited with code 0. Perfect. Code 0 when you exit a program means it was successful, so that is good. Now we would want to kill that. And so if I guess the test of whether that's working properly or not would be delete our volume so that we don't have the database migration and seeding applied. Run that one first, then run our normal Docker compose and see if we get see if we're able to boot up successfully without having to have the migration within the main API server container. It's in use. In use by who? We'll just force it. Oh.
That sounds familiar. Like if force doesn't work or sudo doesn't work, then I'm lost.
Okay, so first let's do make build. Make run local. So this should fail, we think, if the database volume was properly wiped out. No. So apparently those volumes were not where that database was stored. So we're here. Maybe we should create an explicit volume for the database to store all the anything we want to persist. So the data as well as any configuration stuff onto our host system. That would be good. Or we could just put it in a specific volume. Volumes. We'll just name it DB volume. And then what are all my options for this? So I could do a bind mount to our local database. This looks promising. Yeah, so I'll just define it within our database portion here. And we want, let's do, just gonna make a DB data folder out here. And then let's not have that one for now.
Right, and do you need to add this to the Docker ignore, or is that not necessary?
That will likely be necessary.
Right.
Yeah. Let's just run it for now and see. Ideally, we'll get some files in there after we run it. Unless it doesn't like our... Keeps warning us about this, so let's delete it. Makefile. There we go. Pushkar says, looks like I'm pretty late. Yeah, we've been going for a little while, but we're still making progress. So hopefully you'll still see some useful things. And Ali wants to know what I'm drinking. It is coffee. It is 9 a.m. in the morning here, so I have my morning coffee. It's a little later for Donny, but he's also having coffee for whatever reason.
I only drink coffee, man.
What is your preferred method of making coffee?
Well, if I'm not lazy, then I tend to use my French coffee press, and with my own bones, or beans, not bones. Otherwise, I would just use espresso or something in that trend. What about you?
Yeah, I have it's called an AeroPress, so it's kind of in between a French press and a espresso. I don't know, it's like a plastic thing with a plunger. Makes a pretty good single cup.
Interesting. In my previous job, we had this really fancy coffee machine, which did everything for you. So hopefully, if I get rich one day, I will get myself one.
Nice. So our database. Let me see. Docker. Yes. So let's just jump into that database container and see what's going on. Docker exec -it bash. So do we have data in cd/var lib postgres data? Okay, so we have all this stuff. We want to get those files onto the host system. And Ali was asking you a question, Donny. He says, are you in college, self-taught?
In between.
In between?
No, nice. I'm self-taught, but I did join college. But I've actually been teaching. I've done some workshops, but I didn't really learn anything. But the positive side about college is that if the thing that you are studying is your passion, then it's really great because you have this big amount of free time to do your own thing. So there are some people in my class that are like programming is not for them, and you can actually tell that they're really struggling with it. While I'm like, okay, so you give me my assignment, I will do it in like 2 hours, and then I got all the free time for myself. But yeah, basically I'm self-taught. I got mentored by just a dev, which is also watching us right now.
Oh yeah, we saw a comment from him earlier.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I studied mechanical engineering, graduated a while ago. Spent some time as a research scientist, research engineer, and then eventually switched over to software a few years back. So somewhat self-taught, somewhat academically taught. I think most of my software knowledge, though, came from learning on the job. Yeah, so what we wanted to happen was we want to get all these data, which are in this directory on our container, and we want them to be stored locally in, I wonder if, in this file so that we can persist them outside of that container. And for example, once we're on our droplet, we'll want those to be stored on the disk so that when we take a snapshot, a daily backup, we'll have those data in in the backup. No declaration was found. Okay, yeah, so if I do it that way, so let's do docker inspect on that container and just see what mounts it actually has. Docker yes, Postgres, docker inspect. So then what do we actually have in terms of mounts? We've got this volume. Yeah, so it looks like it's just has this volume and is not actually using our local one. Like if I do so B62 B62 maybe it just needs to be initialized. All right, so let's kill this, delete that volume. then start our app. Yeah, Ali asks a really good question. He says, what are the design constraints in league decks making DevOps harder? Feel like a lot of moving parts and it's getting complicated for a single machine. Yeah, so part of this is that Donny had a planned upgrade for the project. And so he's going to be making a bunch of changes to the application, adding TypeScript. And so we wanted to just make the process of updating and deploying rock solid, so that it'll be very easy for him to do that. The other thing that was missing a little bit before was he had just manually spun up the DigitalOcean droplet and went and installed and configured a bunch of things on there. And so by moving it to a Docker-based deployment, now the configuration of the virtual machine is pretty much, it doesn't matter at all, because everything dependency-wise will be contained inside these Docker containers, and he could deploy it very easily to a new system once we get things locked down here. You are right that it is borderline overly complex for a single server deployment, but it's also a good learning process to add all this stuff. I don't know, any additional thoughts, Donny?
No, you pretty much said everything. Yeah.
Cool. And now we're just kind of stumbling along trying to figure out why we can't get our Postgres data to show up on our host system. Is this one necessary for some reason? What is this one? Postgres socket? What is this actually doing?
I guess the only thing I could add is that we both have a staging and production environment.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point as well. So you want to have a staging environment, and right now you just essentially run your GitHub action on the server itself. And so that was becoming a bit of a problem when you would trigger a new build. It would spin up a lot of resource usage on this droplet that also contained your database and your application. And so part of what we're going to do is move that onto the GitHub action, GitHub hosted runners. And so that will enable the application system to be less impacted by development process and new deploys and that sort of thing. And moving to Docker helps to clean up that interface versus trying to do something like build it on the GitHub runner, match the system OS version and compatibility on the two systems, and copy over the dependencies. Docker just helps to provide a nice clean interface for ensuring that what we build on the GitHub runner will actually run as expected on the droplet. Yeah, so I was just looking at this, and it seems like we're doing things correctly. That's kind of like what our mount looked like. We had this volume mount. We do have data appended. maybe the old container is still there, and so it's using the configuration it already had. API. So this one might be our offending. I thought that was going to be the trick, but it was not. Postgres database already appears to contain. Yeah, this is the line we want to go away. We want to not have a database already. And Joshua is asking if Docker's good on ARM64. They have had capability to do cross multi-platform builds for a while with BuildX. I actually have a video about using BuildX on my channel that goes into that. When I experimented with it, it seemed to work pretty well for most of the simple Docker file configurations that I threw at it. When I tried it on a very complex Docker file from one of my clients, it didn't succeed. So I think in general, yes, it works pretty well, but you'll probably run into, when you get to more complex situations, dependencies. So it's not the issue with Docker. It's just the fact that maybe some of the dependencies that you care about aren't built for multi-platform use yet. And so that situation continues to improve over time. So yeah, I would just test it out with BuildX. And you can do that on regardless of what the architecture of your host system is. So yeah, I would just go give that a shot. And I know they did just release to the general availability version of Docker support for Apple Silicon. So running natively on the new Macs is now possible. But you will need to use BuildX if you want to build containers for x86 architectures. Let's just do a full Docker system prune. We're deleting it all. Yeah, I think it seems like for whatever reason, the database container had a volume that was persisting, and so we weren't reinitializing. And so I think that could have been why we weren't getting what we wanted, but I'm not sure. Not sure. Yeah, this is the beauty of doing it live, right?
Definitely. Always happens when you're live too.
Right, yeah, I'm sure, like, after the stream, I'll shut it down, and then 10 minutes later, I'll be like, oh, that's what was going on.
Yeah. Like, I tend to, when I do my programming sessions, I tend to use the Pomodoro technique.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always forced to just take a break. And every time after a break, I'm like, that is why. It helps a lot.
Yeah. I think I probably have 50 gigabytes of containers from other projects. It's working its way through. But yeah, I guess while that's working, we can continue to think about, so if we can get this data persisted, then we can have our seed/migration step that we were working on with this, we'll also want to do the same thing within that and persist those data locally. We need to add something that essentially after we run this, and it succeeds with the migration, we then need to kill the Postgres container, right? Because the API server exits, but then the Postgres container is just sitting there running. So yeah, we'll want to add something here. Cool. We're working on that. We haven't made it to that yet. How are you doing on time, Donnie? You okay?
Oh, I'm fine.
He's fine. All right.
Good all the time. A little bit sleepy, but I've been programming too much.
Ali says it's the real process. The only reason I see you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's sometimes useful to show the full process rather than getting everything working and then here's my 10-minute spiel on how to make it all magic.
Yeah.
Oh, we got 18 gigabytes back. Nice. He says, just imagine someone saying, yeah, Docker's pretty easy. Get start and run. Hand a real world project like Donnie's code base and not just a to-do app. Yeah, exactly. So you start to run into the challenges when you have actual systems, actual users.
It's also really annoying. When I first got into programming, I also watched a lot of YouTube tutorials. And you can just tell that everyone who does a tutorial, they have two screens, and then you will see them looking at the second screen. And then they will start typing, oh yeah, today we will be doing this. And then they add all the code. It's just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But it's just kind of, I don't know. It doesn't connect with me. So that's why I also started a YouTube channel where I just, okay, this is the goal and we will see how it works out. And then you'll get a video of an hour of me struggling, trying to get it to work.
Yeah, I think there's a balance too of like having the real process and then also having the high bandwidth video that you can just like go through all the steps. Yeah, so I think having a balance can be useful.
I think if you prepare well enough, then it should be pretty easy to do without actual example code next to you.
Yeah.
And there's also like it's pretty common to say that if you can't explain something, wait, how does it go again? This quote.
Yeah, if you can't explain it, you don't really know it, I think is the gist of it.
Yeah, there was this quote, but I can't remember. Whatever. Point made.
All right, so we're rebuilding those containers. I guess in the meantime, we could also quickly add a if I could type it correctly. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, so what I was thinking here is that I would, to the client one, I'm debating between having a multi-stage or 2 separate Docker files. But we have this stage where we essentially install all our dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
In our development one, we're going to want to have the command be this yarn start command. In our production one, we'll do a run yarn
build,
right? And then copy our resulting files into an Nginx container, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll do that in a bit. Still chugging along here. Because, right, this one, we've installed our dependencies. This will be actually base. And then from base. And we want to copy essentially the entire working directory into this.
So what's the difference between base and just a period?
So base is saying copy from this guy.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, with a multi-stage build, you can have named stages and then copy from one to the next, versus the period is just on my host system, my current directory.
Yeah.
And so really, can I just do from, I forget if I can do from base just as like, because that would be fine for my development one. But then we need to build it here. Like, can I just do from base run yarn build from base as, and then do something like Nginx version. What's the latest Nginx version?
Good question.
Good question. Docker. Yeah, Ali says one time he responded to a tweet basically saying he had noticed a typo in a tutorial, but then the error just kind of went away, and the typo went away, and the error never showed up because the creator had edited it off screen, and then through the magic of video editing, it no longer existed.
I wish that worked in real life. Oh,
Right,
there's
yeah,
a bug. I would just sleep and tomorrow it's fixed.
Just pause and then, yeah, so why don't we just use 1.19 is fine, most likely. And it would be copy from this builder. And then we need, where does it actually put the files when you build them with yarn build?
It's
public
build. So client build.
So this will be user source,
I think.
app build. Oh, client. Oh, we're already in client, so it'll just be build. And that then Nginx expects the files to be located here.
Oh, it was a lot of fun setting up Nginx because I had because of 2 environments, I had to create separate folders and move them all. I was so confused.
Yeah, eventually we'll probably need to do something like that where we'll this Nginx container will actually have the configuration for production and staging front ends as well as proxying to the back ends, right? But first, just to get it running, we'll do that. And it looks like our build stage is done, or our build process. So let's go back. We're still in the top level, make on local. Got to repull our images. And what we're hoping is that when it initializes that DB, we get some files in this guy. Look at that. We got what we wanted. Yeah, so it must have been just there was a pre-existing container that had already been initialized with a default Docker volume that was not mounted onto the host. And so it just kept reusing that. Even though we had our Docker Compose configured correctly, we were not getting these data. I think I actually noticed when we booted up the first time with that new volume mount, it gave us some warning in the terminal. It like scrolled by super fast. It was like, oh, like volume already created, ignoring or like not taking effect. So shouldn't have ignored that maybe. But that's good. That means that we have these data. You mentioned a good point. We want to add that to both our git ignore. We don't want to check in our data. That would not be useful.
Yeah, that once happened with a project where I was trying to set up Docker, and I did it all on my droplet, and I also used Git on my droplet, so I pushed it to Git, and then 1 week later I realized I actually pushed my DB data into my GitHub repo, and it was a public one. Oh, be a nightmare. So I had to reset all accounts and all that stuff because well, it's in my version control, so I'm kind of screwed. Good lesson.
Yeah. Okay, so actually here it's okay because our DB data is one level up in our directory tree from where this Docker context is being built. It should not be included anyways. Does that make sense? Like because we're building the container image, the image in this server directory, DB data is living at our top level. And so we should be okay on that front. But I did add it to the git ignore, so that's good. Great. So now, I guess the original thing when we went down that rabbit hole was we wanted to run our migration on the Docker Compose bootstrap version and then run our API server, because presumably did we die here? Can't reach DB. What? Running bootstrap script. Why did it run the bootstrap script? It shouldn't have, right?
Nope.
Nope. Oh, that's inside the database container. That's their bootstrap script, not ours. Okay. But our API, is the app running successfully? That'd be localhost 3000. It is. Admin. ESD.
Oh, or not.
Aha. Could not proxy API.
So is the server running or not? Doesn't look like
Oh,
it is.
maybe it did crash. That would make sense. We would kind of expect it to, right? Because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. So did it die here? Please make sure. Can't reach. It looks like it didn't wait for the database to finish coming online before it started, which is weird because we told it to, but maybe the database said it was ready before it actually was, or maybe this is necessary to allow that connection. Let's see. Yeah, so maybe it is that those data aren't getting, or the migrations aren't getting applied properly. So let's try our bootstrap compose. We want to copy this volume mount in. I also should look up what this is actually doing. Da-da. After environment. Son, thank you for the kind words. Glad to have you here. Excited to see everyone in the audience. And yeah, Donny, it's unclear to me if the proxy link's going to the wrong URL or if the API server just isn't running. I think it's the latter, but I'm not sure.
We could test it by going to
Yeah.
localhost 5000
True,
API
true.
champions. Or champion, I can't remember.
Permission denied. Is that normal? No.
I've seen it before though.
Oh, okay.
On the stream today.
Oh, interesting.
But then I just ran properly.
Yeah, so we can just test localhost 5000, API champion. It's coming online. Okay, API server is running properly. Now we've logged in. Okay, so it was the fact that it looks like it just hadn't been migrated, and so the API server was crashing upon startup, and so we weren't able to log in. So we are making progress. That is good. Sorry for all the window switching there. Hopefully it's not too dizzying.
It's not that bad.
We don't really need this. We'll do some research offline on what that actually does and whether or not we need it. It was suggested on Stack Overflow, but it doesn't seem like we actually need it. So if we run Docker Compose in the background, then wait some amount of time and then shut it down is kind of a hacky way to do it, but would work. Like right now, we run this and then we have to manually kill the Docker Compose process. Whereas it would probably be nicer, like if some new developers coming on the project, they would want to bootstrap their DB and then run local. But for now, leaving it that way is not too bad. We can clean that up later. Yeah, so now the process would be you clone the repo, you build the images, you run this bootstrap DB, you kill it, you then run local, and you should be up and running with your app. Let's jump back to the client side and keep working on this. We got client. Build base. Docker build. I think there's like a -- target maybe. Docker build target. Yeah, so if we say Docker build -- target equals base. CD client. Then that should look within our Docker file. You close everything else. Find the stage name base and build just that. So now we should have this as our base. Can I just do builder? This is the syntax I'm not sure about, if we can just use that directly. Target base.
Wait, aren't those two the same?
What's that?
I think you just got line 2 and 5 are the same now. Or am I going insane?
You are not insane. You are correct. Looks like that worked. Build from all my different sites are zoomed at different levels. Okay, yeah, it looks like that was the way that we want to do it. Using previous stage as new stage, we built here, and then we used it there. And so here we're running yarn build as we can just add some comments, and then we can do this Cool.
Are you familiar with Vim?
I am familiar with it. I am not proficient in it.
Right. Gotta get used to it, man. It's life changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mapped my VS Code in a way that I only need to use my keyboard now. Like I can do literally everything. It's, like after a while, it just gets so much easier. Although I do not recommend doing it during work, like when you're not efficient at it, because that doesn't go well together. I've tried it.
So just adding some comments. Our base stage essentially installs all our dependencies. We then have a builder stage, and this is the one that will run locally.
Mm-hmm.
Our builder stage, and I'll do this. Our builder stage starts from there, builds our static files, and then our production stage copies those files into an Nginx container. And so let's just see if we can build that production container and run it. Make build production. All right, we've got some comments. Let's see. Hey, Bobby BB, welcome. What Make is like a build tool. Yeah, so Make is a Unix tool that's been around forever, and basically most people use it to like set up the compilation steps required to build like a C program or some compiled program, but it's also useful if you're on a Unix based system to be able to just add a bunch of little commands that you can run one off. So that's kind of what I use it for. Web Dev Junkie is a fan of using the mouse. Me too, but that's just because I'm a noob when it comes to Vim. Eventually, maybe I'll invest the time. Maybe I should make a series of spending 30 days learning Vim and then make a video about it. Show how speedy I get.
I mean, I should be honest. I'm not using the editor. Like I'm just using the extension because I tried setting up NeoVim and it just every time I added a plugin, it just didn't work. Although there is a new editor called OniVim 2, which is like really similar to VS Code and uses its ecosystem for all the extensions, but its main focus is on Vim. And right now, I think it goes for like $40, like one-time purchase. But you can also, like the code is open source, so you can just build it and use it for free.
Cool. Yeah. So it is now building our site.
Building is always fun.
It seems like it shouldn't take that long to build the site. How complicated can it be?
I wonder how it would be in like 10 years. Like, would building be even worse, or would it actually get better?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the software industry does a pretty good job of whenever there's performance gains on the hardware side, we just write slower software. We make it easier to write software, but those sometimes take advantage and utilize those extra compute cycles. But it looks like that succeeded. So now if we do, actually, let's just tag this -t client production leak decks client. do that again. It's already cached, so it should just take a second. Except that, no, our makefile got copied into our source because it was not in the Docker ignore. So if I kill that and do what? I thought that would have allowed us to use the cache, but instead we can just use this image directly in a new window while it's building again. Docker run. What port is Nginx run on by default?
I wish I knew.
I think it's like 8080. Oh, 80 inside the container. So I'll map 8080 to that. So we'll do -p 8080 on my local system to 80 inside the container. And then that.
I was actually surprised. I was setting up a MongoDB Docker instance. And I was stuck for like literally 30 minutes. And the only reason I was stuck was because I did the pod mapping the wrong way. And it just didn't tell me.
Yeah. Okay, so that actually looks like it worked. So we ran our Docker, our Nginx based production client image as a container. We port forwarded from 8080 on my local host, my host system, to port 80 inside the container, which is what Nginx is serving on by default. And then I was able to load it up here, and it looks good. There is still then work to do on configuring the the proxy stuff. So to get that all working is definitely still a to do. We actually did this, but there's still make termination of bootstrap process nicer. Cool. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up for today. But yeah, we were able to pull out the database bootstrapping process from the main API server container. We persisted those data onto our local system with a volume mount in this DB data directory. We still have a little bit of a to-do to make that nicer. Probably do that off stream just because it's not that interesting. We're probably just going to kill the Docker compose process once it completes. We added an Nginx server and a production build on the client with a multi-stage build. So here we now have sort of our base image, a builder image that builds the static site, and then our actual Nginx image. We still have some work to do on this to get things configured properly in terms of proxying and that sort of thing. Actually, it might be useful, Donny, if after the stream, if you can grab the Nginx config from the droplet that you're currently using, that would be a good base, I think, to start from. That'll be good. And then we had this thing that we found in a Stack Overflow post, and we weren't sure what it did, so we should look it up. And then I think the other big thing is going to be creating a process for dumping / restoring from production, well, any DB from DB. And so that'll probably be a focus for for next time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anything else to add on your end?
No, not really. I mean, eventually we still need to add the build step for TypeScript, but
Yeah. That'll just be
that's
in
pretty simple.
Yeah, it'll be in the Docker files.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see if we have any additional comments. It looks like Ali is learning Vim right now, potentially. That's cool. Nice. Getting wrapped around. Yeah, with Tmux, so then you have multiple windows all happening at the same time, and Vim. It's a lot, but I just haven't had the time to invest in it yet. Haven't seen you use shell file a lot. Yeah, so you could do something similar to what I do with makefiles in a shell script. You could have individual functions and then configure it such that you could call those specifically, or you could source that shell script so that you could call them. They would be in your shell namespace. They're slightly less convenient, I find, for this style where you have a bunch of small commands that you want to run independently of another. But yeah, sometimes I use them, but just it's a little more convenient for me to use a makefile. And then his project is not a to-do. Surely it will take some time to build. I'm not sure what that is in reference to, but anyways, cool. Well, we made some progress today. We got stuck a little bit. We did some debugging. We didn't quite make it to DigitalOcean, so sorry if people got tricked by the clickbait thumbnail that had DigitalOcean in it. We'll probably just use the same thumbnail next time, I suppose. But yeah, I think that should do it for today. And thanks, Donny, for joining. And we will see you next time. Take care. Bye.